Welcome, dear colleagues, to another episode of Innovation Sparks. Today, we are here to explore the dynamic world of fact-checking, which seems essential in our ever-changing digital media landscape. And at the same time, as media professionals, we understand the constant need to adapt and innovate. However, does this go together? We are here to find out. In our series, as I hope you already noticed, we are on a mission to uncover the media experiences of other media outlets and share their valuable insights. We want to explore innovative thinking in action, discover examples of change, exploration, and fresh approaches in the real world. Obviously, also to understand how these innovations can be seamlessly integrated into our daily work, because that always seems to be a big challenge. Today, our focus is squarely on the field of fact-checking. We are here to look at what works and what doesn't, and to examine the findings of our respectable colleagues, whom we'll introduce in a moment. But before we get to the heart of the matter, let's set the stage. In our media landscapes, no matter where you are, information flows at an unprecedented rate, and misinformation is just a click away. The challenges we face are immense, and we must equip ourselves with the tools, strategies, and fresh perspectives to navigate this landscape effectively. In addition, we need to find time, as always, resources and ways to adjust ourselves, and sometimes, when the opportunity comes along, to think outside of the box. So, how can we achieve this? To answer these questions, we are privileged to have with us today two distinguished guests, both masters in the world of fact-checking, if I may say. First, I would like to introduce Sophie Timmermann, Deputy Head of CORRECTIV. Yes, that's the German pronunciation, and its fact-checking team. She has extensive experience in this field and is deeply engaged in web-based alternative political media and open source investigations.
Sophie Timmermann is Deputy Head of the Fact-Checking Team at CORRECTIV, a non-profit investigative newsroom. There, she oversees the editorial work, including fact checks, video and audio production, as well as in-depth pieces around mis and disinformation. She has previously researched the rise of alternative online political media in the UK and conducted open-source investigations on airstrikes in Syria.
Sophie, I usually take this opportunity right at the beginning to ask our guests to introduce their platforms briefly for those who are not familiar with outlets such as CORRECTIV in Germany. Although, to be fair, many colleagues from the Western Balkans know what you do and who you are. Anyhow, what makes your product or content unique?
Well, hey, most of all, I'm glad to be here and talk to you about innovation and fact-checking, which is a topic that deeply interests us and keeps us busy. So I'm Deputy Head of the fact-checking team at CORRECTIV. CORRECTIV is a non-profit investigative newsroom, which as per se is such a novel aspect in the German landscape. And we try to expose systematic abuses, but also have a dedicated fact-checking team, which I would say is also rather large. It exists since 2017 and comprises, as of today, 12 full-time journalists dedicated to combating mis and disinformation.
Thanks, Sophie. Also joining us today is Darko Brkan, president of a prominent Bosnian NGO Why Not, or Zašto ne in Bosnian, a civil society activist with strong professional interests in technology and media accountability, among many other things.
Darko Brkan is the president of CA Why Not, one of the most prominent Bosnian NGOs that promotes civic activism, government accountability, and the use of technology and digital media in deepening democracy. Why Not journalists are daily dealing with fact-checking and disinformation debunking. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, he is a regular contributor to many local and international media like BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera, PBS, CBC, NPR, Deutsche Welle, and a speaker at prominent organizations, institutions, and events.
Darko, Zašto ne is a non-governmental organization with a rather complex and extensive history and numerous projects behind you and tasks in, if I may say, equally complex societies such as Bosnian. Please share a few sentences about the NGO focusing on fact-checking activities and platforms. What differentiates you from other outlets in Bosnia and the region?
Well, I mean, zašto ne is mostly about only one word, which is accountability, which is not even translatable into our language. And basically, we try to exert accountability from different actors in the society. We started with, like, obvious politicians and people who are, like, into public offices. And then we actually realized that there's a whole aspect of media accountability that needs to be treated in order for the whole social space to be kind of, like, put in the right place. And that's why, after starting our first fact-checking portal, which is called Istinomir, which is basically only fact-checking politicians and public officials, in 2017 we started Raskrinkavanje, which is like our portal that fact-checks media and social media at the same time. So it's kind of taking care of the information space around us in various ways. And we have like a pretty big team now of like some 15 people working only on fact-checking disinformation and media manipulation, not only in Bosnia, to be truthful, because we do fact-check everything in our language territory, which means that together with our other regional outlets that are doing similar things, we fact-check everything that's kind of understandable to us, which means the information space in Serbia, Croatia, Montenegro, and Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Thanks, Darko, for the introduction. And I'm Jakov Leon, a DW News editor and DW Academy consultant, but more importantly, your host today.
Innovation Sparks host is a content creator and supervising editor with 30-plus years of experience, currently engaged as an audience engagement and development specialist, supporting DW's editorial team. In the past 10 years, he has also worked as a digital media consultant with DW Akademie in Europe, Asia, and Africa, mainly focusing on digital storytelling, news production, gathering, and fact-checking, but also content production for children and youth.
Sophie, Darko, assuming that fact-checkers are busier than ever right now, with crisis after crisis hitting the headlines in the, let's say, last 2 or more years, does that fact alone suggest a need for more debunking of disinformation? And if so, is it just a matter of ramping up or adapting our approach? Is there any room and need for innovative thinking in such circumstances at all? Who wants to start?
I can start. I think it's a very common question, and I think one thing we have to be very clear about, that disinformation has always existed, especially on migration, on climate change, in conflict and in war times. But now, especially due to COVID, it has become so much more prominent and deeply embedded in society, obviously also with our technological advances. But that's something we can always learn from these narratives and things that we've seen over the past decade or years. And that helps us think innovatively. I think there's a lot of challenges that we have to focus on, especially now with the just rapid pace that mis and disinformation spreads around the internet through different social media channels. We have to be very aware of the different chances that those type of information exerts from, and also understand how we can reach people better in a time where they mostly consume information and news online. So that's obviously something very pressing for us that we have to get our head around.
Yes, and if I may, yeah, of course, if I may continue, basically, fact-checking is on like its biggest exam since probably like we started working on it, like especially after the crisis of the COVID and then like the invasion on Ukraine and other global events that are happening pretty much all the time. We're in this like state of constant global crises, I think, in the past couple of years, and also as it has been said, that the whole thing has kind of put us on the new level. And generally, like, let me quote Winston Churchill here in saying, like, fact-checking is probably the worst way of fighting disinformation, except for all others that are out there. So, like, there is no evidence base for fighting disinformation without fact-checking. And basically, like, that's kind of the core of making everything regarding fighting disinformation possible. And then on top of that, we need to innovate. And I think, like, on one side, we do it a lot, fact-checking outlets and organizations, but I think that basically it's the role of the whole society, of the media, of like, civil society, of generally all the people who are engaged in this to use the basis of fact-checking to implement different innovative things. I mean, we're going to share a couple of things that we do, but to be honest with you, like, the sea is so big that, like, coming from our resources and our ways of doing, we can only kind of scratch the surface of what's out there at the moment, like, and there needs to be everything from regulatory changes to, like every person for himself using the materials that we have. But like, of course, regardless of that, we do a lot of innovation, and especially in the last couple of years, it has been a must in order to actually get to the public.
Since we have fact-checking and innovation as key or buzzwords in this conversation, and at the same time, given the advances in technology, tools and platforms that are inevitably required in verifying information, where are automation and AI in all of this right now, especially from your personal and professional experience? Is it really becoming the new normal, being implemented as we speak? Do you have any thoughts and examples you would like to mention or share?
I'm gonna talk about this in the presentation as well that I prepared, but I think it's a challenge, but it can also aid us in our work. So at the one hand, also with AI and all these kind of things, it poses challenges for us because it makes it harder to spot manipulated footage or, fake documents or something if it's, becoming more and more sophisticated. So that's a challenge for us. At the same time, we have also more and more tools that can help us detect those fabrications and deepfakes and footages. But we have to be very careful because it develops at such a rapid pace that we have to be very careful. And you can see this with news reports that say, but I've plugged this in this tool and it says it's fake, but then there's another tool that says it's not fake. I think you have to be very cautious, and there always has to be that human aspect and control at the end of the day that kind of supervises all of this fact-checking work. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add to that briefly, because that's probably a topic that we can spend like 10 of these podcasts only talking about. And like, it's so wide and there are so many aspects of it that it's hard to even grasp it. But like from the philosophical point of view that we already kind of like, scratched on, I believe that actually we need to like, use it as much as possible, use all the things where it can help us. But generally, there's always going to be a human factor that kind of decides in the end and turn something into like, a fact check or not. And especially from the point of like fact checkers. Okay, of course, there can be some simple things done probably through machines, but like, in terms of final decisions, it needs to come from the people who are like, experienced in that. And on the other hand, like, on the fear side, on this like, kind of threat side, one good positive thought from me is that actually we have never, as a humankind, been so concerned about a new technology so far in a way that we are about AI. Like, immediately, imagine when social networks started, like, we were all positive and totally cool about it. Like, this is the first technology advancement where we, from the start said like, okay, let's be cautious about it, let's regulate, let's like, work on it. So like, it kind of gives me some optimism that like, we won't go through another crisis with this, like, hopefully in the future, even though, these risks are out there all the time.
And maybe just to add one thing briefly is because we always get asked now with what's going on in Israel and Gaza, do you see a lot of AI generated content? And we say, actually, we don't at the moment for now. It's mostly just context circulating in a very bad context, which is not the right context, but not so much AI footage, which I think is very interesting that we have observed among the fact-checking community. Let's see if it stays this way, but I think it's an interesting component of these discussions.
Absolutely. I might be wrong, but this is our fourth discussion on innovations and AI. And in comparison to all other journalistic aspects, fact-checking seems to be maybe the only one, or at least one of the aspects where you can't really avoid using automation and AI, because this is exactly what people who do not mean well use, right? So you kind of need to cope with that and keep up in the race, trying to debunk what they are producing. So I guess there's only one way in this, and that means trying to make this work in your advantage.
Yeah, I mean, we've been automatizing our processes even before AI was a buzzword, like, so we are well ahead on that, and we've been like, since the start, we realized that the amount of things that we are getting every day is so big that we cannot grasp it without some automation. So like, we've been doing it as like, Razkrinkavanje, also as the global fact-checking community, we've been doing it like for years now. And like, we are already on the train, and we are using it as much as we could. But of course, as I said, like, there are limitations to it that we have to like kind of grasp. And also generally there are these liability limitations to using AI in general that also we as a fact-checking community have to accept and have to abide by them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to be on top of these strategies and, understand, how they go about spreading, mis and disinformation. I think one of the biggest challenges for us, we're always too slow because the mis and disinformation is already out there. How do we cope with this? How do we try to make it, comprehensive and, well researched and then distributed widely so people actually get to reach those fact checks, not just those who are already preaching to the choir too. So yeah, definitely.
One more question in this warm-up round. With the growth of platforms trying to help debunk fake news, finding the means to produce content and be seen and recognized as a reliable source of information is becoming harder. At least that's, my impression as a user. Is collaboration, meaning joint research and sharing of knowledge and tools, one of the solutions, and also maybe a way to think innovatively? Or are there other approaches and models that would contribute to quality, but also to the deployment of some innovative solutions in this field?
Well, I mean, I'll take that on as like, there have been examples of like, even global collaborations by the fact-checking community, for instance, on the topics that you already mentioned, like COVID and invasion in Ukraine, and like, it's constantly developing, and we've seen the wonderful effects of them, of this, like, because, for instance, now our people, when they are doing fact checks in our language, they usually first turn to the databases of others from other parts of the world, and they get it like, much faster. And as Sophie said, like, probably the being fast is the most important thing in this field of work. And like, we see that, like, by collaboration, we managed to, like, really shorten our time of publishing fact checks by a lot, because there's a lot of news outlets there or fact-checking outlets there that are doing the similar job. And the minute it comes up in English, German, Spanish, it's out there in a joint database, and we pick it up. We just like find the same source in our language, and we do it. So, like, that's just one of the examples how collaboration helps. And I think that even in sharing resources, in automating things, in like, whatever there is, like, we can find a lot of reasons to collaborate. And for me, somebody who's basically here, at least in the region, given the similar culture and the language, same language, it's kind of natural to cooperate. There's no other way to deal with things if you don't cooperate, because, like, this information doesn't stop at the borders. It's basically like just goes across all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've said it all. Collaboration is key, and as you said, I think the point I really want to stress. Disinformation doesn't stop at borders. I mean, we have those reports, I can, point to EDMO, this European Media Observatory. You have those narratives that, we publish every month, and you see the same type of things occurring in every single country. Like, just once you start looking, you will find them. And that's why it's so important to kind of, pool our resources and think strategically about how we can make, fact-checking material accessible to as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have reached the part of the session where we should take the discussion to, let's say, a higher level and give our dear colleagues, the media professionals in Western Balkans who are following the show, at least a bit of showcase, focusing on best practice examples. This is the moment when I ask our guest, and the first to go will be Sophie, to take over the role of presenter, to take control of the screen and show us what CORRECTIV and her colleagues are doing, what is working well for them, and is there any room for innovative thinking despite a big workload, as mentioned several times?
Yeah, so I think you can see my screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So I just want to give you a very quick deep dive of how we try to incorporate innovation into our daily fact-checking steps. Let's put it this way. So as you can see, monitoring, claim selection, debunking, publication, and distribution. I'm sure you know some of these tools, but I just want to give you kind of a real-life example of how we're trying to apply these tools in our everyday work within those steps that are part of our daily fact-checking. So the first one is the monitoring. And, I've learned that you mostly use Viber, but WhatsApp in Germany is a very prominent feature. And so for a few years now, we've come up with this WhatsApp tip line, where people and users can reach out to us and send us basically tips on potential mis and disinformation. And it's been working really, really well. Obviously, there are different options, so users can select different options from the menu. And it's connected to an AI, so there's a backend where we publish and connect our fact checks. So if users send us a video or a picture that we have already fact-checked, then the chatbot will send the existing fact check to the user, which is very satisfying for them, because they get kind of a quick response to their inquiry. And if not, we can use this claim and tip and discuss it internally in our fact-checking team to see if we want to publish a fact check about it. We provide other features with this WhatsApp, so it's constantly evolving. There is an option to subscribe to a newsletter to receive every Friday. You can also get tips on how to spot and combat mis and disinformation. And I would say it's just a very great tool for community building, and also be on top of what keeps people up there, on their toes. So what kind of information is relevant for us and keeps them busy, and just be kind of, in touch with, users and what, they're encountering online. So, I'm not sure if that exists or if this feature is available on Viber, but, if not, I would highly recommend maybe you try it out. Let's go to the next part, which is claim selection. So once we've monitored and we have all these claims, obviously there's different criteria we have to go through to understand what kind of claims do we actually want to fact check. And there's so many tools out there to help us do that. But there's one thing I want to highlight within CORRECTIV. It's a branch called NoFake, and its aim is basically to set up a group of citizen fact checkers. So there's a media literacy component to it, to help train them spot mis and disinformation, but also help us sift through the vast amount of mis and disinformation that is out there, and help us with the claim selection. So this is not yet there, but it's underway, and I think it's going to be great because we're a big believer of incorporating citizens into our projects as well. The other thing that NoFake does, it helps, it partners up with academia and scientific partners, so in essence, different universities. And they're working on training AI to help us with the claim selection to make it more efficient with us. So for instance, we do not fact check opinion because that's just not something we can fact check. So based on the wording of a certain claim that people sent in, for instance, this AI can help us distinguish and already filter out claims that are not useful for a fact check. And also, it can help us connect and pool data from different data sources to understand maybe there is already a fact check on a certain topic. And if not, that's something we should fact check or not. But so those are kind of the ways that it helps us sift through the different claims we have right there. Now goes, if we continue to the debunking and editing part, which obviously takes up, I would say, most of our time. As we say, we are pressed on time. We want to try to get our fact check out there as soon as possible, but the editing process with us is very rigorous. So next to the author, we have 2 external people looking over each fact check to check the facts, the structure, and everything. And one thing I want to highlight again is collaboration, as we talked about, which is extremely valuable to us and helpful in pooling resources. I'm sure you know those EDMO hubs. There is an EDMO hub also for Croatia or Czech Republic, Poland, etc. We in Germany have the German-Austrian Digital Media Observatory, or shortly GATMO, as we call it. And there we again work with scientific partners, universities, and they are working on tools to help us sift through AI-generated content, manipulated content. Again, as we stressed just before, we gotta be careful with these kind of things. There always has to be that human control, so always a person looking and supervising these kind of things. But obviously those tools are extremely valuable to us, and they can help us also in the future, not just as a first encounter to see if an image is fake or not, or maybe like help us as part of our ongoing investigation. And now we go on to publication. And so we've done all the work. We have our beautiful fact check. But as you know, most fact checks can be quite technical, so scientifically heavy, not so accessible in terms of the language we use. And there is one thing we published within CORRECTIV, a different branch called Reporterfabrik, which focuses on training journalists and providing media literacy campaigns. And they came up with a tool which I thought was brilliant. They released it this month, and we haven't used it much, but I think it shows just how creative using AI can be, and how we can also think about it in terms of applying it to our fact-checking work. So there's this famous journalist called Wolf Schneider, and he came up with certain rules how to write better in German. So obviously this is very specific to our context in Germany and the German language. But I thought it was such a brilliant idea. So what you do basically, you can plug in your text, and the AI, which is trained on the rules of Wolf Schneider, is going to give you recommendations on how to improve your text in terms of the language you use, maybe to shorten your sentences, reduce the number of certain words that you use, and just, I don't know, have a better structure. And although that cannot really help us with the editing and fact-checking part of it, it can help us, making our text more accessible to users, maybe use less scientific words, and just, pinpoint certain aspects that we think we can, describe a bit easier or in a less scientific way. So I thought that was great, and I'm very excited to try this out in our fact-checking work. And it's very novel. And maybe, other examples exist in the countries where you're from, that are similar to this kind of AI tool. And lastly, which I think is one of the biggest concerns for us, is distribution, because we always have to be very critical about our fact-checking work. Do we actually reach those people that are prone to consuming mis and disinformation? Or are we just preaching to the choir and are accessing those people who are already inclined, to trust us and trust news reports, etc.? So there's like 3 formats that I would like to present to you that we partly came up with. So the first is we started transforming our fact checks into videos, which means it makes it more accessible. We publish them on Instagram, on YouTube, and also very recently on TikTok. And this has been a major success for us, like reaching up to 60,000 views on Instagram, which is a lot for us. I mean, always depending on your follower base. And it opened up a very new target group in terms of those people who are maybe not, super inclined to reading a 10-minute investigative fact-checking report online, but digesting it and making it a bit more snackable and visually appealing. The other thing that we also did this year for the first time is we came up with a podcast, and this podcast is based on our work around disinformation in the Ukraine war. So we have translated hundreds of fact checks that we've done on this topic and turned it into a 6-part storytelling podcast, which is available on Spotify and all other podcast platforms. And this was very challenging for us because it's very different to write a fact check and publish it online as a text than to think about it as an audio format. So people, listen to it in the kitchen, in the bathroom, the living room, etc. But this has been so much fun. And I encourage you all to use these kind of new formats to, build upon the existing fact-checking work that you've done, but make it accessible to yet another group of people that are more inclined to listen to use rather than reading it. And the last thing is, and I'm sure and I'm well aware that this is not accessible to everyone yet, but this is the WhatsApp channel, which is different to the WhatsApp chatbot that I presented to you, but it's a new feature that WhatsApp introduced. And basically people can subscribe to the channel and just consume news. They can react to it, give a thumbs up, a heart, sometimes other weird emotions that we do not understand. And then we link our articles and they can click on it and read it. And for some reason, this has been extremely successful. We have almost 100,000 followers in this WhatsApp channel so far. And yet again, those people on WhatsApp are very different to the people on our chatbot, because the people on our chatbot are openly looking for mis and disinformation. Those people subscribing to our WhatsApp channel are mostly consuming the information already there. So this yet again opens up a very novel way for us to reaching new people, and it has been a great way to expanding our fact-checking work. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sophie, for all the insights and right on time. While we wait for Darko to take charge and share his team's experiences as well, I will briefly remind you to use the opportunity to share your thoughts and questions with our guests. Once we've finished showcasing, we will use the last segment of this podcast to share and address some of them. That said, use the Viber community we named Innovation Sparks and feel like you are interacting with friends and family, as we have a lot of media professionals from the Western Balkan region there. Darko, your 10 minutes are on.
Okay, do you hear me now? Yes.
Yes.
So yeah, basically I'll try to kind of like, not to repeat things that Sophie has been talking about, which is mostly like, the process side of the newsroom and how we deal with innovation, and we also like, have to innovate in-house all the time. So in terms of like the processes of work, fact-checking, getting to fact-checks, getting to claims, and then in the end finding the sources of this information and all of that. But I kind of decided to make my presentation more about the content, about the presentation, and about reaching target audiences. And when I want to talk about innovation in terms of reaching audiences, I usually like to present it in a way that, like, we have to innovate in order for the people to get something, to get the information looking like they are used to getting it usually. So when you want to target a certain target group, you have to adapt you have to innovate in a way to adapt your content to them. So like I'm just going to give a couple of examples and run through them, because I kind of like, realize that people are easily getting it once they are shown real examples. So I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. Okay, so I'll start here. So basically, this is one of the things that we kind of developed once we realized that actually there's a lot of young people, there's a whole generation of people on Instagram. So we said, okay, let's make all of our stories, all of our like, fact checks look like stories on Instagram. Of course, we cannot do all of them, but like, quite a substantial number of them we turn into this part of our platform. That's basically all looking like Instagram stories. So these are all basically different fact checks turned into stories. I'll just show one. For instance, this is a recent one where we had like a story about a story that was published by the Bild magazine saying that 45 horses were killed in Prijedor area in 3 days. And like, we are usually with this, we are first like, just stating the facts as the usual fact check is. And then like, we are going to the sources of this information, who has been reporting on this. And then like, what are the facts? We give basically the facts. In this case, it is that there are no findings whatsoever, neither from the institutions or from the like organizations that deal with horses or veterinarian offices. And in the end, like, we make the rating, and obviously we end the story. So it's like a simple way of showing how your fact check works. And obviously people can go and read further on, but like for most young people, this is the best way of getting the story. Then like, I'm just gonna show like how we turn it into reels on Instagram. Just a second. So yeah, this is like a short video, usually not longer than like, a minute, probably much less than a minute, but like, up to a minute at the most. It's the same structure as the previous one, only using video as a format. Basically, this is a very recent video about like some disinformation regarding sending help into Gaza and we also end up with the message of that. So that's basically just to kind of show you some innovation, how we try to target different audiences, and they have both been successful. The story module has been there for probably I think 2 years now, and it's been one of our probably most successful innovations we've done in terms of reaching audiences in general. Then there's another thing we've been using a lot of other formats. One of them is we've just published a couple of days ago, we published an online app that deals with media literacy. It's kind of going through specific examples of different fact checks or different things that we've been working on in order to it's targeted for high school audiences mostly, so we just published it, and it's been quite a success. We've been kind of now circling the country, talking to different people from high schools and students, and it's been quite a success so far. Then what else are we using? We're using quizzes. So one of the quizzes that we do that I'm just going to briefly show, this is a quiz on media literacy, which is basically just kind of a simple yes and no quiz that kind of gives you, in the end, it gives you the result in terms of percentage of how much a person is knowledgeable about different issues regarding media literacy. Then a very specific quiz is on fact checking, where we kind of this one about theories of conspiracy, and basically they are just either different facts or fact checks that we do. Once you answer, you get the answer whether it's correct or not. So it's just I mean, the thing about all these things is that they have to be fairly easy to use and fairly and something that people have the user experience of while they are doing it. And that this has, from our perspective, this is something that we've kind of learned over different projects and different things that we've been doing. I wanna show you one more thing, which is basically this new concept that we've been developing recently. This is our way of kind of trying to get ahead of this information. So we've identified probably some 15 to 20 different dates or events that are kind of triggers to this information, or that can also as themselves have disinformative narratives around themselves. And we are now trying to develop these regular articles that we would be publishing beforehand these events, and basically trying to prevent or trying to kind of teach the people what to expect in terms of this information that's coming to them. So one of those we published just recently is the commemoration of the Srebrenica genocide. The second one that we are planning will be on climate change, because we obviously have the winter coming, so it's an event that will trigger climate-related disinformation for sure. And then we did things on elections. So for instance, we published the whole booklet on election-related disinformation and different ways that can trigger different things. Or one of these is the interviews, as you can see, as the political propaganda way of disinforming people. We always do kind of adapt it to social media, in this case to Facebook, with visuals that are kind of depending on the audiences. We develop the visuals also for all of these. And then the last thing that I want to actually mention here in terms of the content that we produce is that we find kind of innovative and enriching the people is we are starting these more in-depth stories and more talking about narratives. We did a whole serial of narratives related to the invasion on Ukraine. And basically, this is kind of a new way where we actually learned that just publishing a single individual fact check is usually not enough to explain the whole strategy of this information and the whole narrative that's surrounding specific claims. And then we now decided, and we are writing more of these articles that go in depth into not specific fact checks, but actual narratives around them.
Thanks, Darko. Okay, the last segment of the session is usually meant for a few more questions or Q&A. I definitely have one, and I will start with that. In your experiences, what have been some of the most surprising or unexpected findings in the world of fact-checking and media innovation, and how have these findings influenced your approaches? Was there anything that left you in shock after investigating? I'm sure there was, but it could be equally shocking or boring. Because
to be honest, I feel like nothing shocks me anymore, because sometimes there's the stupidest thing out there, and you don't understand how people can actually fall trapped to this. So I think within my experience, sadly so, there's nothing that shocks me anymore. I think there's, the stupidest fact check that reaches billions of people, millions maybe. And then there's also something so sophisticated, and you invest time and time and time again to debunk it. And then a year later, it comes back again, and you're like, I gotta keep trying and gotta keep working. But that's sometimes the tough part about it.
Yeah, that's exactly the same answer I wanted to give. Is basically like, there's so many anecdotes and stories, but they are all related mostly to like, things that you actually cannot believe that actually people are believing in. Like, I don't know, especially we had a lot of those around COVID, where like, you would have totally like, unbelievable things that are actually like kind of from the first minute you saw it, that it's like, it's intended as a joke, and then people start believing it. And like, these are probably like, the best things that we've seen, like in terms of the shocking. But then whenever people come to us and say like, you're dealing with like, things that are kind of banal or basic, like, you shouldn't be fact checking this. And then we kind of show them the numbers, because this is where the numbers of our audiences are. This is where we usually make the biggest changes around the things that we would never think that people would actually believe in.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'll poke you more, so I'll turn it around a bit. There must be some short anecdote you would like to share about the content you produced or investigation you conducted that got you in trouble, any kind of trouble. Was there something that you published?
Yeah, I mean, our like our usual, like, yeah, there are our usual troubles there are two kinds of troubles for us. One kind of trouble is like when a certain media outlet thinks that we fact checked them for something that we didn't fact check another media outlet that did the same thing. But in like, in reality, it is that probably the other media outlet presented the piece of news correctly, where the other one didn't, but they cannot even see it as such. And we even had like death threats coming from media outlets here in Bosnia, claiming that we fact checked them while we didn't the other outlet, basically on a totally false claim. So this is one type of them. And then the other type of them is like these questionable situations. So like, I'll tell a short anecdote. It was the World Cup in Russia, the football World Cup. And there was this whole fake news about, because Croatia reached semifinals, actually the finals then, but like in semifinals, they said that the goalkeeper of Croatia devoted the penalty win in the semifinals to the mothers of Srebrenica, because it was on the 11th of July was the whole thing. And we looked into the press conferences that day. We sent even an official note to the Football Association of Croatia. We did all due diligence, and we published the fact check that he never appeared on any media, nor he spoke to any media on that day, and there was no record of anything that he said. So at least he didn't do it publicly. And then two days later, one journalist from Croatia goes there and he posed that question to the goalkeeper, and where he actually kind of says like something, he makes a sound that nobody can know if it's a yes or no. And then we have the whole backlash on us, like saying, okay, we were wrong, that he actually devoted it to them. But then in the meantime, we were lucky that Football Association actually answered us officially and said that there was no press conference or anything. But like, it's usually these misperceptions of why we fact check something as wrong, because like it doesn't necessarily means that it's not correct. It means that sometimes that the media outlet hasn't provided enough sources for the claim that they made. So like, that's also a fact check. So basically, and generally the public doesn't understand that. So we are very cautious when we are kind of addressing these issues where there's not enough sources to fact check something.
Mm-hmm. Sophie?
Great anecdote on the spot. I think just as a side note, I think that's what I also love about connecting with other fact checkers, because our experiences are so similar. Like just what you also presented in your innovation presentation with the narratives and the videos and all that, that's something we can really relate to. And I think that's why collaboration is so important. In terms of anecdote, I think also something you briefly touched upon is sometimes it's very, very important to spell out why you fact check something. And that comes especially to play when it's a post that was originally meant as, ironic or satire, and it was labeled as such. And people were like, ha, 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 don't you see, that is covered by, freedom of speech, which it is. But then, it continues to be spread without those labels, and people actually take it serious. And that's something we also want to always specify in our, fact checks now, that something was originally labeled as such, but then it continued to spread without such label. So I think that's something we're really very keen on always, making sure the titles.
We even have a special label satire for those things. So we have even published the new rating that's called only satire for these things. Yeah,
makes sense. Okay, to stick to the topic, the media landscape is, as we know, constantly evolving. Can you share your thoughts on the future of fact-checking and innovation in media, and what media professionals should be prepared for in the coming year? So basically, I'm asking you to foresee the future. Like, where do you see yourself in your outlet and, the tools you will be working with, or maybe formats in, let's say, 5 years, if not 10? Any ideas?
Well, I mean, I can give you my hopes, like rather than predictions, because things can go anywhere. But like, what I'm hoping for is that actually our research that we've done so far in our databases will be used for good causes in terms of promoting good content and credible journalism, and making the media outlets kind of finally be able to be sustainable by producing credible content, while at the same time understanding who are the bad actors on the field. And also I'm at least hoping that there will be much more scrutiny on media outlets that are producing this information based on the work that we do. We currently do have impact in terms of our own visibility. We do have impact in cooperation with at least a couple of the social media platforms, but generally it can be a much higher impact, that things can develop in that way where our work is used much more for better purposes. Of course, we all hope that we'll be able to produce much more and much better content, and we are striving there. But the pond is so deep that there needs to be different kind of multi-stakeholder societal approaches to that, and that's what I'm hoping for. That we will become a part of a big endeavor that will not only have fact checkers there, but generally people from all parts of society using what we've been doing for years now in terms of improving the information ecosystem around us. That's my hope.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally affirm that that's my hope too, and I like your, approach of making this your hope. I think we're really going to be put to the test next year with the upcoming elections that are also relevant to us in Germany. We have different states than in the EU and the US, but in your countries as well, in different regions. And I think that's going to put us to the test, and also we're going to see if people are actually serious about that stuff and serious about combating mis and disinformation. You have certain regulatory approaches in the EU now with the DSA, the Digital Services Act, and let's see how that's going to turn out as well. And, just to go back to what Darko said at the beginning, I think it's so important that, fact-checking alone is not the solution. We got to work with different stakeholders. We got to have civic society involved. We got to have schools involved to train people in media and information literacy. And obviously, we're going to have, the platforms, take responsibility for their role in, allowing mis and disinformation to spread. So, we got to work together. So I think collaboration is key. And I think, keep those technological components in mind with AR, keep track of those advancements, so we're not just flooded with them and feel lost and helpless. So we got to face them ahead of time. And I think next year is really going to put us to the test.
And I have to add one thing to what Sophie has said, is that basically I'm hoping that the Balkans will see the benefits of DSA and code of practice also, at least in a similar way that the EU will in the future. And for that, I think that actually the EU should definitely expand its digital single market to the Balkans as soon as possible. Because if we wait for the Balkans countries to become EU member states, we are going to have like a Wild West in terms of information here before we reach the EU. So that's just another point that I have to make that you opened up.
Mm-hmm. As experts in your fields, what advice do you have for aspiring fact checkers and media professionals looking to stay innovative in their work?
That's a tough one. I'm not sure I would recommend anyone delve into this profession. I'm joking. I think it's a very hard profession. You really you got to be informed about, how hard it can be, not just mentally, but also it's just, you receive a lot of threats, it's just, in terms of the mental health aspect, it's extremely important, left alone the innovation side that you have to keep track of the advancements. So just for people, who want to work in fact check, and they got to be sure that's something, that they're confident about, and that's something that they're very invested in. Because if not, I think, you're not going to last long, because there's so much pressure upon you from outside, but also your own expectations of making sure your fact check is, top notch. In terms of keeping up to date, again, I think it's so important to pool your expertise with other people around you, if that's people in your region. But I think just now, talking to Darko, for instance, I think there's so many things I would want to talk to him about, like the videos and the formats and how they implement these. So I think also look outside of your own, language scope, and just try to be innovative and see what worked in different countries. Also for pre-banking, for instance, we had I think Google and YouTube, they did this campaign in Poland, among other countries, and then they did it in Germany as well, just like recently this summer. And I think that's also some lessons they learned from, trying things in different countries. And that's true to our fact-checking work too. I think we can learn so much from each other.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that basically I think that there's there's never going to be too many fact checkers out there, because there's so much things to do. So whoever wants to do it and has the stomach to do it, and I totally agree with everything that Sophie said, it's really, really, really a difficult job. And at the same time, there's, no matter how much innovation you use, no matter how much you, in the end, shorten your work, in the end, it all comes back to the good old journalism practices of checking, finding your sources, making sure that they are correct. Without real hard journalistic work, you cannot do this job, no matter how much you innovate. And it's that, and then on top of that, you're basically, your credibility is basically on the line all the time. One mistake done by a fact checker can, especially on an important topic, can kind of discredit the whole organization. And that's why, there are things to help us. There are international coalitions. There's the code of principles that we abide by, both the EFCSN1 and the IFCN1, but still in the end of the day, you are responsible for your own content. And it's a very, very seriously accountable work, because one big slip and your credibility goes down the flood. So it's a hard job, but there's never enough of us. So we welcome any new person or persons or organizations doing fact checking everywhere in the world.
And maybe just to add one more thing, because, I mentioned before, we always have to be very fast. But I think what you say, it's so true. And my advice always be right, but always be right first before putting out your content. I think that's the most basic instinct you got to follow. And that's the most important thing. And it's always, you're going to feel very good about yourself waking up, because, you've taken the time to thoroughly think through and, check everything to the last detail.
And that's been yeah, that's been kind of hard for us, hiring journalists from newsrooms. was kind of hard for us because they have this instinct of publishing things. They want to be exclusive. They want to be first one. And they're just taming that in them was really hard, like, because here it's exactly what Sophie said. You need to be right and then publishable. But like, for them, they want to publish as soon as possible. And it's really, it was an issue for us hiring journalists in the newsroom.
Sophie, Darko, thank you for sharing your thoughts, experiences, and definitely interesting insights. I hope our viewers have enjoyed equally this digital hangout on innovation as I did. So, dear colleagues, we have come to the end of another hopefully informative episode in our Innovation Spark series. We also hope you gained valuable new perspectives on fact-checking and innovation. If you would like to revisit this episode or explore our previous sessions, you can find them on demand through the below-mentioned platforms. We encourage you to share these insights with your colleagues and help foster innovation within your professional networks, because this is our goal, and hopefully yours as well. Don't forget to connect with our Viber community, where you can stay informed about upcoming episodes and access engaging content on innovation and media. Your participation is invaluable to us, and we look forward to interacting with you again. As we say goodbye today, remember that your creativity is the driving force behind innovation. Together, let's continue to shape a more dynamic and innovative media landscape. Take care, stay inspired and healthy, and until we meet again, farewell.